on YouTube? Welcome to the latest update episode of the U.S.S. Enterprise D. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. And if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you guys enough for that. Today we got some stuff to go over. I wanted to do a new video on my Enterprise D. I had done a teaser a little while back after I updated the very front of the neck and also the deflector dish. But there's been some recent additions that I've added in addition to that, and I haven't gotten a chance to actually go over that stuff. So without further ado, let's kick back, relax, we're going to dive right into this thing. So as you can see, I've been getting a lot of work done on the Enterprise D. I'm really trying to push this thing as far as I can to get it to look as close as I possibly can to a real Galaxy class ship, and taking into account some of the concept art from Picard Season 3. You'll notice just a tiny difference between my Enterprise D and what was seen in the final episode. You're going to notice some rust spots on my Enterprise, and that's something that they almost did with the concept art, but for whatever reason, when they decided to go over to actually make the 3D assets, none of those details were incorporated. But I just thought it was something really cool, so that's where you can see a lot of that rust paneling in the ship. Just thinking about all those little details here and there have really helped me to bring this to the next level. Now, one of the key areas specifically that I want to kind of focus on for a moment or two is the neck, and then also the deflector dish. Because somebody might look at this and be like, dude, you completely rebuilt your Enterprise from scratch, and that's actually not true. What you see here is based off of the foundation from the original Enterprise that I had worked on in Season 1, and I just modified the crap out of it. And really what I did with the neck here, you have to imagine like the letter V. Maybe just kind of inflated a little bit. And that's your outline. That's pretty much your outline for the whole neck. And you're just maybe doing like a row of 4 going up, and then you go up and out 1 with the cut. That's basically how I did the very front of the neck. Now the sides and top here, you're going to notice that that's very similar, if not exactly the same, to how I had the original neck. I tried my hardest to blend those two areas in the best that I could, and admittedly it's still not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. And then the same with the front, very front outline of the neck. I just followed my pattern, and adding in an additional outline and going in with that 2x2 template for the very front. Excuse me. But doing the 2x2 template for the very front of the neck, that helped it to get that angle. And the front of the deflector dish, I have all the stuff actually that I recorded for the neck and the deflector dish. And if I have a lot of people asking for it and they have problems with it, I may release the episodes on that. I know in the past, actually on my last episode, I said I was retiring from doing tutorials, and that is still very much the case. I don't foresee that I'm going to be going back to doing how I was doing tutorials in the past, just jumping from ship to ship. I want to be able to provide the best content that I can. So with that being said, the option to do small tutorials here and there might still be on the table, but these are going to be things that I pick and choose that I feel that people are having trouble with, that I can really maximize helping people, rather than just going through the entire process of building these things over and over again. If you've watched a couple of my builds, you'll get my entire process down. It's just apples and oranges as far as going build to build. But I kind of veered off there for a second, but the point I was trying to make is that working on the neck and the saucer, admittedly, this is one of the most difficult areas on the Enterprise D that I've had trouble with since day one. But all things considered, I think what I have right now is about as close as I've ever gotten it to an accuracy that's acceptable. Um, and what it all comes down to is your outlines. This is why I talk about wireframing your ships out and why it's just so vital, because it's going to carry over into everything. And in this case, the outline for the deflector dish is really what makes it or breaks it. Every single attempt I had done previously with the deflector dish, um, it ended up being way too big and way too jagged. Um, but I was also running into another problem as far as building it from the side. That seemed to be just a huge, huge struggle. And I think I've come up with a decent enough template here that works. And I didn't change it all that much from what I had before. All I did here was I built out an oval, and I just used the top half of that oval. And then the very ends of it, I ended up stretching out and wrapping around, and then bringing it down into like a stretched out V. That's the shape of the outline of the deflector dish itself. Now the inner parts of it, you can see that this part right here, this is a pretty even oval. But this outline right here is what's most important. And this isn't even, I don't think this is something that's really that difficult to do. Each row, I'm just going back and down with the cut one. And all this is just going back and looking at your reference photos, looking at it from different angles, and seeing if things match up. But if you've watched my tutorials, you know exactly what I'm talking about, wireframing these things out. But all things considered, I think that looks pretty darn good. Another area that I've been focusing on that I just actually got done was the very base back end of the neck. I think I finally have gotten it to an acceptable point. One of the areas that it was struggling before is that my Enterprise, the base of the neck, kind of just ended. And it just had a tiny, tiny outline going down to the very tip of the tail end torpedo launcher. And the Galaxy class, it has like a tapered backbone kind of that goes off the back of the neck. It's almost like a tail backbone that goes down the back of it. Now, granted, I'd say mine is slightly more sleek. If I would have made it one for one with how it looks in the show, this part would have been more stretched out going all the way down. And I tried that, and I don't know, for me it just didn't really work all that well with the build. I've kind of noticed on my ships in Minecraft, just kind of like my art style and how I've been doing it, they seem to come out just slightly sleeker than how it looks with the source material. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's something that's very, very natural. If you're an artist, you have your own artist interpretation. So I think I can get away with this. But with that being said, this edition, it is very, very close to how it's supposed to be. And for that reason, I think it blends in perfectly. I mean, that looks pretty good. One of the problems we had with the neck before, from both the front and rear, the neck was way too thin. Now we've gotten that heft into it, and it feels like it's something that's not just going to fly off, and the angles are lining up. This is why I say look at your source material, your reference material, your 3D models. Look at it from different angles, because these things are going to help you to match up your build. Most of the other things that I had done is on the inside of the ship. I have added just a couple of tiny details here and there in the hull. I added in the shuttle bay doors, a couple of orange pinstriping, and then I've been working on getting in the escape pods, adding in the windows, and just the loose odds and ends on the detail for the saucer. I recently got the registration done. Admittedly, though, the letter D, it's floating one block up higher than it should be. I need to move it down just by one, and I think we'll be in pretty good shape there. But a benchmark that we have on this version of the Enterprise is that we've actually gotten further with this version of the ship than we have on the Season 1 version of the Enterprise D, as far as the outside goes in some ways. In other ways, we're still trailing behind. Now, something I did want to show, and I wish I could show it without having the audio. I think I can. Here we go. I just wanted to briefly show this because I've shown this with my Enterprise A, but this is just for anybody that doesn't think that they can build this stuff out, and you do it the first time and it doesn't come out the way that you want it to, and you're like, well, I guess that's that and I just suck. These things, they take a lot of time. There's a huge learning curve, and even when you know what you're doing, you can still make mistakes and still make a wrong decision, and the shape doesn't come out the way that you exactly want it to. But this is a great example of showing what happens when you don't give up and you just keep attacking that same problem from different directions and trying different solutions. This is where we started for Season 1 of the Enterprise D and how it looked. And from that, to take that design from how it looked here, our old neck, our old deflector dish, our old pylons, old nacelles, everything, and to go to that's pretty wild. And that's just a couple of year time span. I think that's pretty impressive. I'm pretty happy with myself as far as the progression that I've made as a builder in Minecraft. It's crazy because I actually had just noticed that last night. And it's almost the reason why I made this video, just to show the progression that I've made. But I couldn't believe how far I've taken this build to where it was. I didn't really realize it until last night. But with that being said, we still have a lot of work to do on this. And a lot of these things, like I said, since I'm not just going to do holding your hand tutorials anymore, I'm still going to talk about this stuff and going over how we can attack some of this. But the key area that I've been holding off on, that I know that I need to address, one of the lingering things on my build for the Enterprise D, and I'm not talking about the scorch marks on the top of the saucer. I know some of you might look at that and be like, well, it doesn't look finished and it looks like crap right now. You'd be right on both accounts, because the scorch marks that I have, they're supposed to be representation of the events at the end of Star Trek Generations. That's what I was going for, but I'm not quite happy with them. No, what I was going to point out on the saucer is a couple of my rows on the saucer, particularly this row, and this row. How it bows out like that. And this is what happens when you don't go back to your pixel circle generator every couple of rows and refresh your pixel circle, whether you're doing a circle or an oval. And if you just go off of your template, what's going to happen is that your circle will eventually become distorted. Now, we can easily fix this. This is not hard to fix, because we can go back, we can resize our x-axis point to get our middle, and all we have to do is count out half and times that by 2 and do the same thing for the front and back, and then we can plot in what our new pixel circle will be, and we can just redo those rows. Won't be very hard. So, like, as an example, let's say you're wanting to get ready to do this. You're like, Zero, I'm not quite sure what to do. You have to identify your center, and then you're going to count out this way. And what you're going to have to do, so you know that this row right here is wrong. You know, this row and this row is wrong. We're going to start off the bottom row. So staying in our center, you're going to count all the way out to this row right here, and that will be your starting point. And you'll count that all the way out to your center, times that by 2. And then you're going to do the same thing going forward. That same row, that's vital. You want to make sure that you're not doing on one of the other layers. Once you do that, then you can go back and you can start refreshing it. And you just do one row at a time. Some of them you're probably going to have to delete pretty much what you're going to be deleting, actually. You won't even have to redo this whole thing, guaranteed. It's more intimidating than what it is. It's really going to be this piece right here. Right in there. That's pretty much what will end up being redone. But you do that, and it's going to make the saucer look that much more beautiful. We're also going to have to do the same thing for the lower side of the saucer. Because my laziness kicked in season 1, and these are errors that were there on the ship because I followed the same tutorial as you guys did when I rebuilt this. So that's why you're seeing that they still look so similar in some areas, because these are just parts of the ship that I have not had a chance to update yet. And a point that I'm trying to make at too is you start identifying these areas, maybe not at once, you know, but when you break this stuff down piece by piece, problem to problem, eventually you start knocking them out, and you go from what you just saw a minute ago, which was a screenshot before I really got to even close to the end of season 1 of the Enterprise D, and then even taking that a step further, going all the way to a couple years later, seeing how it looks now. So, best piece of advice I can give you guys, you've got my notes, you've got my previous tutorials, you got this. If you've built the Enterprise D and you've gotten this far, give yourself more credit. You can do this, but don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to try new things. Make multiple save copies. This way, if you make a mistake to the point that you're just not happy with it and you're worried about reverting back to what you were, you can just delete that and go back to a previous save. I do this all the time, and this was a key aspect when I was working on the back end of the tailbone on the Enterprise D. Now we're going to pop into the inside of the ship so we can take a look. Now right off rip, you're going to notice that my hub to enter the Enterprise D, the airlock hub, is vastly different than what I had before. This is something that I've been trying to address, just making things a little bit better, because you have to also take into account before we really didn't have the real estate to build this out like I have it right now on the original version. But since the neck got made a little bit wider, we've got this room to play with. Now you're probably asking yourself right now, bro, what is going on with the color scheme on your ship? So we're going to nerd out for a second. So we go off of what happens in Picard season 3. You find out that Starfleet retrieved the saucer section of the Enterprise D after the events of Star Trek Generations, and Geordi started working on refurbishing it. At one point or another, he gets the star drive, lower hull of another Galaxy class, being the Syracuse, and uses that as a donor to make the Enterprise whole again. But, and this is something that they had in the concept art too, because they had it on the registration with the concept art for the Enterprise D, but they originally intended it to be a little bit more clear that the lower section of the ship wasn't the same exact Galaxy class. Colors were slightly off between the saucer and the lower hull, and also the registration numbers. I wanted to play with that a little bit further, so I started thinking, like, well, you know, I think they only showed like 1 or 2 other Galaxy classes, the interior of them, actual other ships other than the Enterprise. And I noticed that they had like different color schemes. I think one of them had like a green color scheme that was like from season 1 or season 2. I forget the episode, but it was the one where there was like a mechanical issue with the Galaxy class, and they showed another version of it. And it just got me to thinking, I'm like, well, The Syracuse probably has that same type of visual uh, distinction from the Enterprise. So I kept the color scheme the same, but I tried to play with the colors just a little bit, just to make you feel like when you're on this part of the ship that we're not on Enterprise D. We're on the Syracuse, which I thought was pretty cool. So we're going to go down. I just got this done recently. Well, I shouldn't say done, but up to where I am now. We have our updated engineering. Still somewhat close to what I had, but actually it's going to be a little bit bigger and a little bit neater, I think, when it's all said and done. I'll have like a back storage room in here. Actually, there's more than likely this is just going to be closed off, because I think that's how it was in the show. We're going to go all the way up. We'll go down one. And I started adding in other areas. This needs to be fleshed out. This is the battle bridge. Again, you know, updating the color scheme. Ooh. It's the Syracuse. Alright. So now we're up, getting to the saucer. We're still technically on the neck. So that's why I have the colors being still with the Syracuse. Because this is a pro tip. If you look at the positioning where the shuttle bays are, not the primary shuttle bay on the saucer, but below that, they're attached to the neck. So this part here, we're still on the Syracuse. So when we come forward, we're going to have that transitional point, where we go from being on the Syracuse to on the Enterprise. So now we're transitioning back to what feels more familiar color-wise. I thought that this was such a cool thing to do, and I've been excited to show this off to you guys. I've talked about it a little bit, but I don't think I've really had a chance to show it too much. Another thing that I've been really working on, I've been just trying to think about some of the things I built out in Season 1 that I wasn't completely happy with how it turned out. One of them being the mall. The mall itself didn't really feel much like a mall to me. It just felt unfinished. And I had this massive area here in the center, and I just pretty much covered it up with an aquarium, which the Enterprise still had. But I wanted to try to do something a little bit different this time around. So basically what I did is my aquarium, I cut it in half. So technically right now we're on the back end of the saucer. This would be going forward. So this back end is our mall. If you go to the front though, this front half is the aquarium, which is very much what you guys are familiar with. I thought this was a cool compromise. A way to have a little bit of what I had before, but also a way to transition it forward. I tried to add in some more of the research rooms, which they did concept art on the Enterprise D for, originally for the show, but just never made it into it. I wanted to add kind of like some rest areas on each level. I have to do the left side though, over here. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to put right here. But yeah, all these rooms in here, they've been all filled in the same, and it's the same on every level right now. I just have to add in the railing. Then I'm going to have to come over and actually start putting in all the shops to turn this into a legit mall. I think I've got a decent template in place on how I can do this. I started working on a template for the first one. I think that could look pretty good. The one and only thing I don't like about this design, and some of you might say the same thing, it's not quite as clean and quick as the old one was, because before this corridor went all the way forward and connected right to that center hub. I took part of it away in favor of being able to open this area up right here, so this way you can actually really see it. But we can still get there. It's not really that big of a deal. I've got a staircase going down that I'm going to have here, and yes, the Enterprise D did have staircases, so we can get away with that. But if we backtrack just a little bit and we get to our circular corridors, just go either left or right. I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to refresh these corridors, because they're basically the corridors from the Constitution class that I had, just a little bit less developed. As you can see, I haven't fully finished updating all of my corridors as it is. But yeah, we can just come down through the sides, not that big of a deal, and we can go up or down. We've got our main turbo lift. So now we're going to go up. I want to go down just by one. So I do want to show off the main shuttle bay, because it may not seem like it, but I have started working on an expansion for it, because the Enterprise D main shuttle bay is absolutely huge, or huge. It really is. It is so big. And I felt like what I had here was like a great example of like the entry point hub, but it expands so much past this, and I didn't really have the room for it before, but then when I went back and I added in some more layers on top of my saucer, I was able to open up all this extra space here around it. So we'll have multiple points that we can get to our extra extended shuttle bay. There's a lot that we can do with that, cargo and whatever. And then we've got room to where if we need to, we can add in some corridors coming out. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our main saucer turbo lift. Go up one. And hey, now we're on the bridge of the Enterprise D. I tried to keep it fairly close to kind of what I had before, but I did give it a once over. I've got different furniture packs now that I got in Minecraft, and I used actual chairs this time and computer screens, and I'm trying out different colors. I think what's going to happen is the sandstone, I'm probably going to replace it with the white concrete, because the white concrete will actually be, or excuse me, the white terracotta. Because if we go white concrete, it'll be that, but we do white terracotta, it'll give you more of that cream color, which I think is closer to that cream tan color of the Enterprise D. I don't know why the sandstone just seems to be too much sandy, and it doesn't have that cream, the creaminess that the Enterprise D had. But as far as the shape goes, I think that this looks pretty darn good. I love I was able just to stretch out ever so slightly the seating area for Picard, Riker, and Troy, and then our back console here. We're still limited on space up here, though. I'll be honest, as I did actually make this slightly wider than what I had before. Um, I think that this is closer to like the wideness of the Generations bridge, maybe, but I think it works. We have room here where we can add in a ready room for Picard, but we do not have a lot of room to work with. Very limited. Same thing on this side. It's okay though. In a perfect world, I'd love to have it there, but it's not something that's going to be a deal breaker for me. And we've got more room now for the conference room, which is great. Just have to build all that out. Okay, so now we're going to make our way back down. I need to add like a numbering system on here so that I can know where I'm getting off at. But that's what I've got so far on the Enterprise D. I'm not quite sure how, as far as how the airlocks look on the outside, that's subject to change. There could be some significant changes in there. But I'm not really, as you guys can see, I'm not really in that much of a rush to get this thing finished in any length of time. I'm just kind of going back to the Enterprise D whenever I get the itch to. I work on it a little bit and then I get bored and I move on to something else. But there have been some other projects I've been working on Minecraft. Haven't had too much of a chance to show it off, and instead of doing its own separate video, I think I'm just going to show off the stuff that I've done with the Excelsior. The people that took the time to watch the videos on it, I really appreciate you guys. You're freaking amazing, very enthusiastic and positive to what I had. Unfortunately, I didn't really get enough views to where I could warrant putting out the tutorial for it. It kind of sucks because I was hoping to be able to do that at the time. This was before I decided to retire with doing tutorials. But I don't regret building the ship, because this was a challenging build in itself and a lot of fun at the same time. The challenge was the lower hull right there. That was the hardest thing I've ever had to make in Minecraft before, and it's still not perfect. It's still off. One of the things I had so much fun with was just slightly updating it, because I don't know, like, this was just my opinion when I was working on the Excelsior. One of the things I noticed with the Excelsior Class 2 is, well, let me backtrack just a hair. So the original Excelsior class, I always thought it was a cool ship, but when you look at it from the back end or a top-down view, it looks like a limousine. It's so stretched out with the lower hull. So you take that same build dynamics and you have that on the Excelsior 2 class, and you have an oval saucer. So, like, I don't know, like, when I saw the Excelsior 2 class originally, it reminded me more of a cruise ship than a starship. It was just so stretched out. So that was one of the key things I wanted to address. Another key thing was getting rid of some of just the silly design cues that they were trying to throw in there, because, like, I get what they were going for with season 3 of Picard. You're really trying to harken back to those original Star Trek movies with Shatner. The music, the feel, the look, I get it. But the problem is that that technology is over 120 years old in the timeline. It's not going to fit. And I feel that they would have been better suited leaning more into how the ships looked in Star Trek The Next Generation and also the movies that followed. Maybe more so to the TV show, because in The Next Generation, stop and think about it for a second. How, just in Star Trek The Next Generation, not counting Voyager, not counting Deep Space Nine, how many new ships did we actually see? I think you could probably count all of them on one hand. a lot of them were older ships from the previous era, where you had the Reliant and the Excelsior just rebranded over and over again. So that was something I really thought about when I was working on the Excelsior 2. So that's why when you see the ship, it almost feels a little bit closer. It has a little bit of that Sovereign DNA in it. It feels a little bit more compact. It feels a little bit sleeker. That's because I shortened the lower hull a little bit as far as the length. And I also opted for a circular saucer instead of an oval. This isn't confirmed, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, the reason Enterprise E didn't show up in Picard is because the saucer imploded in an atmosphere on a mission where Worf was in command. That's where the joke was from. And I think that was the reasoning, actually. Starfleet started using circular saucers again. I read that somewhere. I just don't recall where. It was Terry Metalis or somebody talking about the logic of why they went back to saucers instead of ovals. But I wanted to take that a step further, because when you think about it, it's like, okay, well, this obviously happened a couple of years ago with the Enterprise E. Why is Starfleet still producing ships with ovals then, if this is a building practice that is no longer safe? So all these new ships that are coming out, they should be getting away from the oval, at least in that fashion. But then we're also adding in some of those design cues from the Enterprise E. You can see how I have the grays with the lighter gray and the darker gray, and that V-cut line. I've got that on the top and the bottom. Kind of rambled on a little bit. I'm sorry about that, but it's exciting talking about this stuff and why I'm making these choices, because to me now, like, looking at this ship, this feels part of the era. And I think that's like, and I'm not trying to hate on Picard. I didn't like Picard season 1 and 2, but I enjoyed season 3, and actually makes me tear up at some of the scenes, especially with Data, because I never in a million years thought that they would do it. But there's still, like, some of the things, like, even like you look at the phasers. When I saw the phasers, like, if you really squint and look at it, it's like, okay, those look like TOS phasers, but they just dockered them up. Like, but I don't want TOS phasers in Next Generation. I want Next Generation phasers. And I think that's the disconnect. That's just my opinion. So those were just some of the things I thought about when I was working on the Excelsior, and I even went a step further, and I added in some of that beautiful blue pinstriping. I think that made a huge difference, at least in my opinion. I started doing that after the Cerritos, because I kind of liked the design language that they had with that, where you notice where you watch Lower Decks, a lot of the ships on there, they had a color theme on the ships, and like the Cerritos was yellow on the outside, and I thought about that. I was like, like that could be cool. Like, you don't want too much of it, but you can have a little bit of bits of blue on here if that's the color you're going to go with, or red or whatever. But yeah, there's not much else I can say about the Excelsior 2. I can go into all this stuff, but really, I'm just kind of spinning my tires there. Talked about it a million times other variation builds. I think she looks amazing. All these ships look great. Have not touched Voyager since I stopped working on it. We're going to make our way over to this area. I've only showed you guys this 1 or 2 times, but we're gonna check it out right now. This is something new that I've been trying, where I've been trying to expand myself out to see if I can do more architecture and things of that nature. Because you guys have seen, I've done some buildings in the past. I did the Beauty and the Beast castle, Tony Stark's mansion, Ghostbusters firehouse, to name a few. There's been some other builds that I've done where I never put up the recordings of them, but I never really put too much time into building out like cities and things like that. So I wanted to challenge myself to see if this was something I could do. So I just came up with a fun project, like let's do like a mix of Manhattan and Gotham City from DC Comics. So what we've ended up with is a Manhattan inspired Gotham City, where we've got what will eventually be Wayne Island. Have not gotten that far, obviously, with Wayne Island. I've got a lot of work to do on that before I can even um, start putting in a ton of detail. Because the mountains on it are going to be kind of intense to build up. But it's not something I haven't done before. I did the same thing when I built Beauty and the Beast Castle. But one of the things I did, or that I plan on doing, you can kind of see it if you really look at it, but I was going to kind of go with like a mixture of different Wayne Manors, starting with heavily being inspired by Batman the Animated Series, where Wayne Manor was built up on a mountain. I was going to have a very similar setup to that, which I thought would be perfect because inside the mountain that can encase the Batcave. And it just felt like the best possible solution for that problem. And then as far as Wayne Manor, I was kind of considering doing like a hodgepodge of a couple of different versions of Wayne Manor and maybe throwing in a dash of Wayne Tower from the Batman. So that's why you kind of see like this outline wireframe of a building structure with a tower at the top. So I was thinking about having like a mansion with a tower at the very top of it. I don't know if that's going to be what I land on, but that's kind of where I was at when I stopped working on it. Now, man, where do I even begin on, I guess, Gotham, Manhattan? I just let's just make this easy and just call it Gotham, inspired by Manhattan. And even got a little bit of dash of San Francisco in there because you're going to notice that I've got Alcatraz Island here. And what I wanted to do with that, I wanted Arkham Asylum, but I wanted to make it real. Alcatraz seemed like the most logical thing to use to pull from. I think Alcatraz is the closest thing that you're going to get to Arkham. They're both on islands. They're very, very similar. Um, and I don't think that was unintentional. I think that was by design. So I just kind of ran with it. But also, like, it's kind of cool where you look at Alcatraz Island. I think that this is a great miniature island that gives you a very clear idea of what this is all going to look like when it's all said and done. It's funny, another thing I was planning on doing with Alcatraz Island, um, for those of you that are over the age of 35, you probably remember the movie The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. Um, I actually started working in like the tunneling system underground, and I was gonna have some of that in there because it just felt right. I don't know. That's a little Easter egg for you, but no. So I was gonna have this broken up into sections, just like how Manhattan really is. Mine won't be as intricate. Um, I'm not going to keep just making this bigger, 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 and bigger, um, just to make sure to have everything there. And you're going to notice that there's variations. That I've got buildings that are not where they are in the original Manhattan. I've got things that are moved around, and that's by design. That's why I say that this is inspired by, not a one for one. One of the reasons I did that is so that I could have creative freedom, so I don't have people coming in the comments saying, oh, you should have done it this way. No, I could do whatever the heck I want to. So in this case, we're doing a hybrid of Gotham and Manhattan. And for that reason, it's its own thing. It can be whatever I want it to be. But some of you that are trying to do something like this scale, and you're not quite sure how to even attack it, My best piece of advice is just start building out grid to grid. And start, even before so doing that, start thinking about in your head how this is actually going to look when it's done. So we've got our main business skyscraper area. I am not calling it the right thing that you call it in a city structure, and I apologize for that. Our main downtown area. That's fitting. So the main downtown area is where all the skyscrapers are going to be, just like Manhattan. But obviously, when you look at Manhattan, also, it's not full of 100-story skyscrapers. Um, the way I kind of broke this down is I've kind of got like three different classes of buildings: old, modern, and futuristic. And I've found, at least for me, when you have that mixture of the three, that's how you're going to come up with something that feels more like Manhattan. Because Manhattan is an ever evolving town. So you're going to have those same three types of buildings: the old buildings, the modern buildings, and then the very futuristic ones. And that's why this feels more natural, or it feels more lived in. Another thing I did too, I did reference real buildings, but I also made a point just to do my own thing. Some of the buildings in here are just completely my own design. Now, moving further back, we've kind of passed over it a few times, but I have a 9/11 memorial inspired area. And if you look around that area, it's more of a residential, because now we transition from skyscrapers to apartment buildings. And I've even got a church right there, actually, which I thought was kind of cool. And then when you move further back, we get into more of the nightlife area of Gotham. So this is kind of like will be the downtown area. So we've got Wayne Casino, and we've got the nightclubs, and then we've got, like, I figured this is where I'll have like kind of like the super 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 bougie expensive skyscrapers. A couple on this corner right here, but probably a lot will be on this area here. This is kind of like, I figure, will be like the billionaires row of Gotham. And then from there, moving over here, this will be more of like a middle class apartment buildings. Um, and here's the thing: when you look at photos of Manhattan, you see a lot of these apartment buildings they're duplicates of one another. So you can do that too. So that's why you see these brown outlines. They're more than likely going to be the same building, stretched out, not stretched out, but built across this area here. Um, and then we've got our Central Park area. So we'll kind of have like the townhouses, smaller homes right here in the front. And then we're going to have an industrial area over in this corner right here. So like sanitation, power, you name it, we'll have all that stuff. And then as we get further back this way, this will go into what will eventually be Chinatown, and some of the other cultured areas in Manhattan. Because I feel like that's very important, that Manhattan itself, and I feel like Gotham would be the same thing. It would be so much diversity and culture. And if you've never been in Manhattan, go there and you'll see what I mean. It's truly worth going to. I've also got the monorail train train system that's going through Gotham. Those trains do work. I've actually just got to update the train track. But one of the things I was going to suggest is, for those of you that are looking to tackle something like this, break it down into grids. So you've got your main um, downtown area. That's one grid, but it's a massive grid. You can almost look at it like each one of these plots is a grid. But that's what I was trying to stick to, is that when you start breaking it down grid to grid and just building up each grid, that'll make it a little bit easier on you. But that's why I was kind of going off to the side for a second, talking about all the different sections of my city, because you kind of have to know that stuff ahead of time, because if you just start randomly throwing stuff down, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like a randomly thrown down city. So some kind of planning needs to go into it. And what's crazy is that there's more stuff that I even plan to do with this. All the way back here, this island in the back, eventually this is going to be Gotham Zoo, which will be very cool. There'll be 2 bridges going over to it, and then that'll actually connect to the 2 islands, which will be the Narrows from Gotham, which I thought would be pretty neat to build. But this is just kind of the stuff I've been working on here, trying out different things. You can see all the way over there in the yonder, I started building out like a dam, because eventually, once I'm done with this specific area right here, I plan to expand it further out and maybe start building out different cities. Vice City is something I had considered doing, and that could very well be a possibility. I think it would be a lot of fun to do it. And I think that I can do it now. Now that I've seen what I can do with actually building out a city, those of you that follow me on Discord know that, like, if you saw like the last stuff that I put out, or even like the City on the Edge Forever teaser, I've really built out the city a lot, and it seems like I have a lot to do, but I've really checked off so many spots on the map. I've got more done than I have left to do, I think, at least for the main island. But once this is finished, ooh, that's gonna be cool. But anyway, I think that might be it. There's not a ton of new builds I've been working on in the traditional sense, but when you start adding all that stuff together, I mean, just Gotham City in itself has been a massive undertaking to do. But I'm incredibly pleased with how it's looking so far. It really feels like a living, breathing city to me. And not to knock what some other people have done, but this feels more real to me because I did what I did. And if you want something on this same level of realism, just follow those steps that I went over. And it might take a little bit of trial and error, because even that being said, some of these buildings, like, if I'm not feeling it, I take it out. So that's just something to think about. But anyway, I've rambled on enough for this episode. Damn, we've been going for almost an hour. But I think that's going to do it for me today. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. And if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and help me supporting the channel. Drop a comment below. If you guys are a fan of this channel, especially now more than ever with the algorithm for YouTube, it's super hard to get any type of traction or views. So make sure to come in and check out these new videos and watch them. And if you guys do have any questions, comments, anything just dropping by to say hey or shoot the breeze, be sure to drop a comment below. I always love hearing from everybody. Be sure to join the Discord. I'll have a link in the description below. But I think that's going to be it. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe weekend. And I hope you guys take it easy, and I'll catch you in the next one.